Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Colleen Daniels, and I have the distinct pleasure of sitting with Curtis Potter today. Hi, Curtis.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm super excited to hear your story and the Mastermind Recovery story. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you met Pastor Femi.
Well, I'm 39 years old. I'm from Chicago. Moved to San Antonio when I was 24. Here in San Antonio, I started a moving company. Was pretty successful. Wound up having drug problems. Wound up on heroin and methadone, and sold the company. Wound up on the streets. Hit rock bottom. That's around the time I met Pastor Femi. At that time, I had my foot in a cast. I couldn't walk, result of an abscess, and received a call from a former employee. We had moved in a doctor that was interested in possibly buying a moving truck, and he also had a church. And at that time, I wasn't going to church anymore, and I'm a believer, and kind of had fallen away at the time. So I was like, oh yeah, like when I hear about going to church, I'm like, okay, it's not by coincidence, like God's bringing this back into my life. So so I went to the church, and it was just a hotel, and found my way in there, and it was like just a small room at a hotel, and it was just Pastor Femi, his wife, his kids, and me. Like there wasn't anyone there. So I came in, it's like me and they're from Nigeria, so me and a Nigerian family, and that was it, and I was like, well, I'm here, so I'm gonna stay. And he started preaching, and he was like the one-man band. He played the keyboard himself, sung himself, and then gave the sermon. So he did everything. And while he was preaching, I felt the Holy Spirit touch me. So I'm not like a real emotional guy. I don't cry. And while he's preaching, like I just had like tears coming down my face. Wow. And for no reason, just don't have an explanation for it. But I knew when that happened that, I'm supposed to stay here. Right. That was like God signaling me, like, you need to keep coming back.
Wonderful. So when you came to the church, you met Pastor Femi, you had no idea where this was going to take you. So tell us a little bit about how things changed for you after meeting Pastor Femi.
Well, I kept coming back to the church service. At that time, I started another job. It was my first time in sober living. So I, was doing pretty decent, had a few months sober, and I was going to church, but then I would often work on Sundays, so I'd miss some services. And, after about 4 or 5 months sobriety, I started to get complacent, and then I had relapsed. And when I relapsed, obviously, I stopped going to church, fell, just disappeared, got kicked out of the house, crashed a vehicle, wound up on the streets, back homeless again, And at that time, I still would call Pastor Femi on the phone. I made it to church a couple times still, even in my addiction, like face all scabbed up and, just really ragged.
Wow.
And I still came a couple times and met up with them.
Wow. That's incredible. I was able to read a little bit about your story, and one of the things that really pulled me was when you talked about your mother, who had always supported you, but at that time, around the time you met Pastor Femi, that he was your only outside support because your mom had basically given up on you. So can you tell us a little bit about how your relationship evolved with Pastor Femi to the point where you became involved with Mastermind Recovery?
Well, yeah, since my family, they've been supportive most of my life, but, I put them through a lot, and saying that I was going to change and never did, saying I would stay sober and I didn't. So, they pretty much washed their hands of me. So I had no form of support at the time. And so calling Pastor Femi, that was really the only support I had, and people, we need to be supported, we need someone to look to talk to, to process things. And I didn't have anybody, outside of the drug community. So that was he was always a source for me that I would reach out to.
At one point, you had relapsed and went into rehab. Can you tell us about that and what that really meant for you?
When I had relapsed and I was coming in and out of church, all messed up, I wound up eventually going to rehab. A friend of mine told me about a way to get free health insurance. So I got this free health insurance and got into a treatment center, which I never thought was possible. I thought you had to be rich and have like $100,000 to go. And so I never tried, through all my years of struggling, and found out about this. So wound up getting into treatment. And then while in treatment, Pastor Femi would come and drive and see me, about an hour drive.
Wow.
I know he's a really busy guy. So it really meant a lot, My mom and her fiance wound up coming out one time, but yeah, Pastor was out there several times. And we would talk on the phone, and yeah, so we would talk a lot, and he was just a really good source of support for me.
Wonderful. And you said, and I quote, Femi and I shared a common goal to help the community, end quote. Talk to us about that, and tell us how that common goal that you had, how that played out into Mastermind Recovery.
God has always put it in my spirit to help people. It was my addiction that kept me from doing that. And so when I got sober, I would, verbalize it, that I could feel in my spirit that it's God's will for me to help people,
Right.
And I would talk to Pastor about it, and, we both agreed that we need to do something to help people, and we had talked about, starting like a ministry or something like that. So we would talk about it, and then one day on a phone call, he told me that he started a moving company, got an LLC for Graceland Wheels, and he started a 501c3 nonprofit, Mastermind Recovery.
Wow.
So yeah, that's how that started.
Right. Wonderful. So I heard that you did some work, some of the current Mastermind programs while you were in rehab. Is that correct?
Yeah, so they separated us in groups. It was like a project we did in there. So we had like 5-person groups. They gave us a poster board and a marker. And they said, if you had a way to help the community, what would you do? Right? And I don't know where it came from. It was just like I just automatically knew, I guess, from my experience and how I got to treatment, and also having to start my life over so many times. I knew the struggles and where help's needed, So I just knew right away, and started doing like this flow chart on the poster board, that involved getting people health insurance, getting them into treatment, then they come into sober living, and then providing all the support and services that people need, like job placement, case management, just extra support and services, and then making money from that and using the money to put back into the community, into outreach, and helping people get health insurance to place them into treatment. So it's like this full circle.
So you shared that with Pastor Femi, and so what was his reaction to your idea?
It was like the following week he came and visited me, and I was like, I want to share this with him. So I took that poster board and took the information on it and put it on a piece of notebook paper, so I could bring the notebook paper to the visit. And I come and show it to him, and he was really interested, and he actually pulled out his cell phone and started taking pictures of it. And it made me feel really good. Here I am, just some addict, in a treatment center, and here's a well-off doctor, owns a psychiatric clinic, in a suit, and taking pictures of my little drawing, taking it seriously. So I was like, wow, kind of surprised me. Yeah.
Amazing. So from a group project, an assignment in rehab at a treatment center, to the first drawing that you did, to now 4 transitional sober houses launched.
It's unbelievable. I mean, if you would have told me, 8 months or a year ago that we'd have 4 sober houses and 3 case managers, or hiring therapists and all this, helping all these people, I would never believe it.
Wow. But you did it. We just know that there's 4 transitional living sober houses now under the umbrella of Mastermind Recovery. Tell us about that journey. How did you get those established? And where are you at in that process now?
So I was just praying, and the only thing that I could hear from God was housing. Yeah. I didn't know what kind of housing, just like housing. And I just kept praying about it, I'm like, what housing? And then, sober living came to mind. And I knew that it was God's will for me to get into sober living. So, I made this whole plan, to pastor, like, I'm going to start sober living houses. And this was not for Mastermind. This was just for myself,
Oh, okay.
I was going to start the sober living houses. And I had this whole plan to start up 4 sober living houses, and had the money all figured out and everything, and went to him and actually borrowed the money and got a lease, our first lease, which is now Evers, our new creation house.
Okay.
And I got that lease under my name. and intended on just doing my own sober living.
Right.
You know, I had got an LLC, you know, Sober Living San Antonio LLC. So I was like in the process of just doing my own thing and separating, you know. But he had a talk with me and brought the flyer back out that we made, and he pointed to it, you know, where you go from the treatment to the sober housing. He's like, we never completed this, you know, like we didn't even start the sober housing. It was kind of a humbling moment, you know, that I had to put my own ambitions aside and do what I knew God wanted us to do.
Wow, that's amazing. So now 4 sober living houses later, and what does the Mastermind Recovery Program look like today?
Initially, we were just like a liaison. So we had the website, we had the application and the phone. We were fundraising, you know, selling a lot of banana bread, giving out flyers, reaching about 500 people a week. So we're reaching a lot of people. They started to call in, fill out the applications, and initially we just connect them to health insurance. And then once they got the health insurance, we would connect them to a treatment center and network. Then they'd come out of treatment, then we'd connect them into a sober living. So when we started opening sober living houses, we became that spot that clients were coming out into. And then once they're in the sober living house, what I think is the best thing about the program is the case management. Because people, you know, most people don't go into recovery on a winning streak, right? They come in and they have their whole life outstanding, you know, like dental problems, haven't been to the doctor in like 10 years, possible legal problems, no food, no clothes, nothing, you know, everything outstanding. And now here they are, you know, put in a position in sober living where they have to come up with rent, they don't have a job, and they have all these other things, you know, and it can be very overwhelming for someone just fresh in sobriety. And I've been in this position so many times. And so that extra support is so crucial. So the case management, when someone comes in, within 48 hours, they meet with a case manager, and they go need by need on their procedure and hit every need from bus pass to, we offer free psychiatric care through Pastor's Psychiatric Clinic, free dental care through one of our partners, Encino Family Dentistry. They provide free services for us. So the case manager sets up the dental appointment, sends them to the psychiatry, gives them the free bus pass, gives them the proof of residency, and sends them to the food stamp office. Make sure they have health insurance if they don't. And if they do have health insurance, make sure that they make an appointment with their primary care provider. Make sure they aren't running out of their medications. So we're paying attention when they come in, how much medication they have, and making sure that they have an appointment before that medication runs out. Because I've seen that frequently, where someone lets us know the day they run out of medication. And you know, if it's a psych med and it takes 2 weeks to work, you know, in that 2 weeks, you know, they can lose everything. So it's very important to be on top of the meds, you know, like I mentioned, like all those things outstanding when they first come out of treatment, it's easy to forget, you know, they need to get a appointment for their medication. So yeah, that's one of the things that case management helps keep track of. And so they hit all, and I didn't even mention all the different needs, you know, but they hit every need, including physical fitness, you know, get them free gym passes. Because, you know, mind, body, spirit, you know, and I'm a fitness guy, you know, and so, you know, what we always see happen is people are in treatment, they make a good workout routine, they're in there exercising, then they come out and they can't get a gym membership because you need a debit card to get a gym membership, and they can't get a debit card till they get a job and get their paycheck. So they create this good habit, and then they got to break the habit because they don't have any way to continue exercising. So we partnered with TrueFit and CrunchFit, and we provide them week free gym passes. So we can give them 2 weeks free to help bridge that gap in the physical fitness. And so
that's amazing.
Yeah, so we address all these needs. We put it on create like a to-do list, you know, with checking boxes, you know, everything they need to do. We have an app that we use, and we have all their goals on the app, and they can follow it and actually check it off, like as they complete things and keep track of it. And then after a week, the case manager has a follow-up appointment with them and checks their progress. And they continue meeting with them weekly until they've completed all their goals. They're working, they have a sponsor, and they're stable working their program. So we help walk them through that process.
So from cradle to grave, because as I understand it, you still go to the streets, right? You go into the streets And what are you doing there? Because you're helping people get plugged in from the street to rehab, right? Is that part of the mastermind recovery as well? Can you tell us about that piece? Because I haven't heard.
Yeah, so we do what we call grace outreach, where we feed, clothe, give care packs, haircuts, and meals to over 100 people, 100 of our unhoused neighbors, we call them. We also bring all the speakers out and give our testimonies, like some of us, I've done it a couple times, but us in the leadership, and other volunteers, people in the houses, they have an opportunity to tell their story and give these people hope,
So if someone is ready, how does your program, Mastermind Recovery, how does the program help someone from the street level to get plugged into Mastermind Recovery?
Yeah, so what we do is to help filter who really wants to change, right? We say, meet us back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. if you want to change your life. And so after church, when I get out of here, Sunday morning, because we do the outreach on Saturday. So after church Sunday, I go straight there and I'm there at 1 p.m. I get on the phone and call our insurance person and get them health insurance. We'll actually pay their whatever's due out of pocket, right? Mastermind will cover it. We get them health insurance, and then we activate a cell phone and give them a cell phone to hold on to while they're waiting.
On that day?
Yeah.
Wow.
While they're waiting for their insurance to kick in, because the insurance kicks in on the 1st.
Wow.
So we try to target these outreaches at the end of the month, so that way we have a small window where we have to follow up with them.
Wow, that's amazing. So it came full circle. You mentioned that you thought that rehab was for the rich, and here you are now sober, directing the program and going back to the streets and actually bringing out those who are ready for change. I just really want to thank you for sharing your story. Your story is one of hope. Your story is one of resilience. Your story is one of surrender. I'm happy that you brought out the church piece, because this is a faith-based program.
We provide transportation to Bible study Thursday night and church Sunday morning. We count that towards their meetings.
Wow.
Yeah, so that way, and we accept anybody regardless of their faith.
Right.
So we accept anybody. If someone is looking for something faith-based, then they're in the right place.
Right.
If they aren't and just want someone with extra support, well, we have that. They can still see the light, and we make it easy for them to get into church and Bible study, even if they're just going because it's a easy way to get a meeting, right?
They're still building connections and community and
God,
support.
God can do what he does in that process. So,
wonderful.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, I'm just really moved by your story. Not only is it a story of resilience, but it's also a story of restoration and recovery. A story that, if you think about it, it could have ended in tragedy, like so many of these stories end in. So I was wondering, what, if anything, would you like to say to Pastor Femi?
Thank you for believing in me, when everyone else gave up on me, and I'd given up on myself, he believed in me. He's been there even through my relapse time, never looked down on me, never thought of less, looks at me how God sees us, as flawless, and he's just been there, been just supportive and takes his time every week to meet with me and talk with me. And he's a very busy guy, and takes that time out. Like every day we're talking, we're texting, he's meeting me weekly. And Pastor Femi's brother, Dr. Aluwale Papula, is also a psychiatrist. So when I came out of treatment, I actually became the first Mastermind Recovery client being seen through their free psychiatry. And Dr. O's been amazing. He's been with me from the beginning, this whole journey, and I still see him every couple months. He's really been there for me as also as a mentor, because we both believe in Christ, and that's an important thing, is to have that common ground. So, while he was, prescribing me with, things to help me with my anxiety, things like that, also he was bringing to my attention the spiritual warfare, that it's not always medications that you need. A lot of times it's just knowing who you are in Christ, because we believe lies, and the enemy really capitalizes on that. So it's helpful to not just have someone to prescribe you medication, but also someone to bring you back to the truth, and actually settle some of those symptoms without even needing medication. Thank you isn't enough.
Wonderful. That's beautiful.